Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You made the trip. You got DanK here, sometimes known as Dan. We got Reverend Will next to me, our constant companion and social accommodator and co-host.
There we go.
We got a great story to start out with. This is written by a gentleman by the name of John Fisher. He is a former Polk County district attorney and was a prosecuting attorney in Oregon for more than 20 years. He wrote this in response to the Oregonian's negative editorial on Measure 80, the legalization initiative. And he wrote that, he said, everything the Oregonian said in this editorial opposing Measure 80 is true. Nevertheless, the editors missed the forest for the trees. On November 6th, voters should legalize marijuana. This is why. First, criminalization breeds disrespect for the law. To successfully enforce the law, it must be supported by an overwhelmingly percentage of the population. Surveys show support for marijuana legalization at about 50%. In a situation reminiscent of prohibition, millions of Americans smoke marijuana. They, as well, millions of others, believe marijuana laws are hypocritical and misguided hypocrisy. Believe that laws here are hypocritical and misguided. Hypocrisy breeds disrespect. This disrespect taints the entire criminal justice system. Second, enforcement is arbitrary. The odds of apprehension are very low. Violating a criminal law should result in swift and certain apprehension and conviction, which is certainly not true of marijuana enforcement. Third, conviction for a marijuana-related offense is devastating and grossly disappropriate to the seriousness of the crime. Millions of people smoke, grow, or sell pot, but for those who are caught, the outcome can be extremely harsh. Distributing, growing, or possessing more than an ounce is a Class A or B felony. Convictions at this level both destroy prospects for a normal life and fall disproportionately on the young and especially people of color. Prosecutors say they use charging decisions or plea bargaining to achieve just results. These are two drawbacks to this argument. The occasional innocent defendants ought not have to choose between pleading guilty to a lower level crime or risking a felony conviction by going to trial on a more serious charge, and there is no recourse if someone is prosecuted by a district attorney who refuses to plea bargain as a matter of principle or is interested in padding his felony conviction statistics, both of which happen in the real world. Fourth, marijuana prohibition encourages organized crime. Although much of the marijuana used in Oregon is homegrown, much is imported from Mexico by drug cartels, which are ruthless and violent. Their presence is bad for Oregon and horrendous for Mexico. Fifth, regulation and taxation could provide substantial income to government. Marijuana may be America's largest cash crop with estimated annual sales of more than $35 billion, more than corn and wheat combined. Taxation could provide public interest programs that discourage use by minors, fund treatment programs, and still have a lot of county and state, and leave a lot for county and state government. This would especially benefit rural counties suffering from loss of timber revenue. You want to pick that up from me?
Sure. Sixth, law enforcement is addicted to money from the drug war. Drug forfeitures and fines produce substantial income for police. This skews enforcement away from other crimes. This is just wrong. Person and property crimes deserve greater emphasis than drug enforcement. Finally, we can't depend on the legislature to legalize marijuana. Though we wish the legislature would take on serious issues, most legislators just strive to avoid controversy. And legalization of marijuana is controversial, so it is up to the people to show the way. For all these reasons, marijuana should be legalized now. Let the legislature amend the silly and stupid parts of the initiative, but don't allow its weaknesses to obscure the main point. Oregonians have been first before in acknowledging changes in societal norms. We may as well be first again. As Dan said earlier, John Fisher is a former Polk County District Attorney and was a prosecuting attorney in Oregon for more than 20 years.
Yeah, that's a great, I think it's a great piece, and the part I really liked was they, as well millions of others, believe marijuana laws are hypocritical and misguided. Hypocrisy breeds disrespect. Disrespect taints the entire criminal justice system. That's so well put. I've been thinking that for a long time, but never had to really get it down on paper, so I really appreciate that. And speaking of people against the Measure 80, here's a list. This is written. This is on the publicreport.org, written by Lee Fang. The top 5 special interest groups lobbying to keep marijuana illegal. Won't read the whole thing, but just give you a rundown of the 5 groups. Number 1, police unions. Police departments across the country have become dependent on federal drug war grants to finance their budget. Excuse me. Private prisons. Corporations. Private prison corporations make millions by incarcerating people who have been in prison for drug crimes, including marijuana. Alcohol and beer companies. Fearing competition for the dollars Americans spend on leisure, alcohol and tobacco interests have lobbied to keep marijuana out of reach. Pharmaceutical corporations. Like the sin industries listed above, pharmaceutical interests would like to keep marijuana illegal so Americans don't have the option of cheap medical alternatives to their products. Number 5, prison guard unions. Prison guard unions have a vested interest in keeping people behind bars, just like for-profit prison companies. So there you go. It's a rundown of the groups that want to keep it illegal. And as John Fisher mentioned in the last piece, it's not going to happen to the legislature. It's going to happen with us. That's the only way it's going to happen. So that's why we urge you to to urge you to vote yes on Measure 80. And then we're down to
police torch, 400 pounds of seized pot. Now considering I've tried to talk to the police chief about this before, and what I've gotten back basically is that the federal government tells him that if they didn't torch the herb, if they actually got it back to us so that we could get it to the patients, that they would be considered drug dealers. Now understand, folks, if that's as screwed up as the federal government is, that they would think that the police departments in each city who are actually being conscious enough to do the will of the people, which was to get marijuana to the people who needed it for medical reasons, then understand that's why we need a change in federal government. So there's 400 plants destroyed after officers allege medical marijuana operation was growing illegally. Following complaints from the property owners, the registered Oregon medical marijuana program grow operation in Veronia was shut down October 11th by the Columbia Enforcement Narcotics Team. While the 23 large pot plants were one under the maximum limit allowed under state law. So that's really important that you pay attention to that line, because they're saying that he is one plant under the limit allowed by the max, and yet because they're judging their size and saying that it would be 3 pounds of pot instead of 1 pound of pot, which basically isn't taken into allowance how much we lose in drying and curing properly the plants, because they don't. They just like to weigh it wet and think that's how we put it out to people. Well, it's not. So understand, they're saying 3 pounds, probably ended up being more than around 1 pound if it were actually dried and cured. So they're just saying that being one plant under on land that was not specifically registered with the medical marijuana program, that's what made the operation illegal. This is all being said by Sergeant Phil Edwards. As long as you stay within the confines of the law, you're fine, Edwards said about the state's medical marijuana rules. But the minute you step out, and isn't that interesting? Because I thought it was more important to get us our medicine according to the people of the state than it was to enforce a simple breach of the contract. That you could have that plant, if you were overtaken, or if you were 5 or 10 plants over, you could have those taken. But in the past, even when that was happening, they were choosing the best plants and pulling them up, which just shows the lack of respect that they have for us as people. So it says, after taking some for evidence, officers gathered the hundreds of pounds of marijuana, took it to an out-of-the-way area, and burned it with diesel fuel. Fire officials were on site to ensure the blaze didn't get out of hand, and Edwards said, adding that the drug smoke blew away from officials. The plants were exceptional in that each contained nearly 3 pounds of marijuana, according to Edwards, while an average outdoor plant might produce 1. So, I mean, it's just like always, we don't know what's really going on with these people in their heads because they choose to abuse us as a people.
Yeah, he mentions, he says, these were abnormally large plants. Reminds me of the legislature. We'll talk about it another time. You need to wrap up. So anyway, that's the kind of thing going on. It's despicable stuff that it is. So vote yes on 80 and try to put an end.
Vote yes on 80. Let's do it, folks. Let's make a difference. Legalize it.
We'll be back.
Do you suffer from fear of losing your election? Are you terrified that voters will discover you've done nothing to improve their lives? Maybe it's time you talk to your spin doctor about Incarcerex. In clinical trials, Incarcerex has been shown effective at reducing election-related anxieties by making voters think you're doing something about the drug problem. It's simplistic and fast-acting. If your problems continue or get worse, you can always double or triple your dose of Incarcerex. Whether it's addiction, therapeutic use, or just casual use, there's an Incarcerex plan for every American. Best of all, taxpayers, not you, will foot the bill. So talk to your spin doctor about Incarcerex today. Common side effects include loss of civil liberties, police corruption, racial injustice, increased terrorism, spread of HIV and AIDS, and violent crime. Bloated prisons are also a common side effect. Stop taking Incarcerex if bloating lasts longer than 20 years. If you're trying to balance the budget, keep families together, or protect human rights, Incarcerex may not be right for you. Do not mix Incarcerex with the Constitution or common sense. So start taking Incarcerex and keep pretending you're doing something about the drug problem.
Welcome back to Eugene Cannabis TV. We have a very special guest in the studio. We have Elvy Musikka from right here in Eugene, one of the remaining four federal medical marijuana patients. And we are lucky enough to have her living in our fair city. So thank you for coming in, Elvy. And you want to talk about Measure 80 and where we're at and where we need to be.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. I've been here for 7 years now. Kind of visit you every year, at least once, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, Measure 80 is really special to me because now we're talking hemp, and we really need our farmers to get back and work with the hemp. I miss not wearing the hemp clothes. They're too expensive, and we got to import them with horrible taxes, and our environment needs to be straightened out. We definitely could be producing much better paper without the ozone destruction that's created by the paper mills. But I want to run down a little bit of the reasons why we're in this mess. 100 years ago, the press began, the Hirsch press began with the propaganda about this new plant called marijuana. Not the kind of awesome that has been in your Bible since the beginning of time, the oldest medicine known to humanity, but this new Mexican weed that was making everybody crazy. And the first laws were actually from the state of California in 1913. Several other states followed after, like Colorado. Isn't it funny? They're the ones trying to change the rules now. And that went on until 1937, where the Tax Act of 1937 came out over the objections of the Medical Association and with lies, again lies, to the Congress who were asking, what does the American Association think about that? Because they began to realize that it was cannabis, that it was hemp we were trying to outlaw. And they lied and said, no, they had no problem. I have come across Dr. Woodward's, James Woodward's letters, and I know that that's just not true. Okay, this was challenged in court by Dr. Tim Leary in '69, and he won at the Supreme Court level. Nixon came into office, and he knew that he was not going to be able to uphold this federal prohibition for long, so he gathered a group of very conservative friends of his, the Schaefer Report, to study this, hoping that he could convince all the parents and continue the hysteria, and he got quite the opposite, because anyone that really studies the issue realizes that marijuana just isn't what we've been told it is. They quickly told him that it was not addictive by the standards of addiction, that it is not a gateway drug, and all of the things that are again repeated again and again through the Indian hemp studies back in 18-something by later on by Judge Young. Anyway, this man decided that he wasn't going to listen to his own commission, threw that pretty much in the trash, and left us a legacy that has now criminalized 25 million marijuana smokers. Not to mention the war on us. It's been a real expense. I don't know how anybody can complain about their budgets and not even touch the $1 trillion that are being wasted on a war against our own people. Constitutionally, we cannot afford this. Environmentally, do you think that maybe ozone destruction and deforestation may have something to do with the fact that every other one of us is expected to have some form of cancer today? Does it have to be every one of us before we understand what's happening here? The immune systems cannot take the depletion of the cannabis plant. It was the most valuable plant in the ecosystem. We have now spent 100 years trying to eradicate it. I mean, formally. It's been long going on before that, but formally in the last 100 years. And the legacy that we're honoring was left to us by a man who had to leave the presidency in disgrace for lack of honesty. Now, do you understand how important it is that you vote and that you understand that you will re-legalize marijuana, and that this federal government needs to get the message that we have had it with this blasphemous, hideous prohibition. We cannot afford it at any level. I can't stress to you enough to get out there and vote. I'm really hoping all 3 of the initiatives around the country pass, even though some of them may have a fault or two that needs to be straightened out. But the reason that I feel it's really necessary that we vote on these initiatives is because the government needs, the federal government needs to get a message that we will not tolerate this kind of nonsense anymore. It's just not acceptable. If we're human beings who want to take charge of our country and everything else that's good for us in it, then we gotta let our farmers compete against in fuel, fiber, paper, pharmaceutical, and nutritional industries. Just about everything we need for survival. That's how I feel about that.
That's right. And also, not to take anything away from what Elvy is saying, but I wanted Elvy to mention to her about her medicine that she gets from the government, how the quality was poor. It got better, it got even worse, and now where are we at? Where are we at now on that?
Thank you. This is something very important too. As you know, the Oregon laws that we created, because I definitely was not living here with you then, but I certainly was here helping get those signatures and talk about how urgent it was that you accepted the fact that for some of us, marijuana is vital. In my case, it had maintained my glaucoma in the left eye under control with no surgeries for 37 years. Now, during that time, I also was a guinea pig for everything else out there. In fact, we gave science my better eye, which within 10 years was totally destroyed along with my life, because the only thing that really has always worked for me has been marijuana. Now, sometimes I get a drop that will help and work along with the marijuana, and that may happen for 2 or 3 years, but eventually I acclimate to it and I have problems again. So all of this was happening, and at the same time, you raised your fees. I don't know why, because we had a meeting last summer not this summer, a year ago, and we made it very clear that if you raise those fees, it would be incredibly unfair to us because we already had a surplus in our accounts, which we have no problem sharing with the government and helping them fix some of the problems that have been created with their budgets. And that was okay with us. But then we expressed at this meeting that some of us would have to drop out if the fees went in the matter that they were proposing. I don't know why we had the meeting. Evidently, the powers that be had already made up their minds. So when I went to renew my card this year, instead of coming up with $10, I was supposed to come up with $100 and then $50 more for my grower. And my income is $700 a month. $655 of that goes to my rent. I don't know where it is that the state of Oregon thinks like people like me can possibly come up with $100, $150 for them. I definitely could not do that. And that's a low income fee because it was $200 and $250 for everyone else. So that was a low fee, but not enough. I had thought that I could qualify for the $20, which is what people on SSI get, but I don't have SSI because if I apply for those extra $20, which is all I would get, $20 or $30 from SSI, I would lose my insurances, the help that I get with my insurances, and that's of extreme value to me as a glaucoma patient. I always have to be under medical control, observation, so on. But what happened here was that I decided, well, since I cannot afford the fees, I better let my grower go. He's only allowed to grow for 4 people. It's not fair for me to tie him up if I can't afford his fees, and I certainly don't think he should be paying the fees to give me marijuana, which is what they have been doing. And I send in my $20, which is for the low-income people. But remember, I don't have SSI, so I've been turned down flat and was told I couldn't get a card. Have been told, even yesterday I received a letter stating that no, they could not protect me from criminal activities, and I would not be able to get a card because I have not complied with their request. They forgot to mention that it was the greedy request of $150 that I didn't have. By the way, I sent them $70, $20 for me and $50 for my grower. I never got that money back either. Here's what I'd like to do. I would like to find out. I tried to contact an attorney, and his secretary told me that no, we weren't going to do anything about that. And I said, well, there are a lot of people like me who cannot afford to stay in the program, and they're just dropping out. She says, oh, well, that's fine, because then, you know, when they get in trouble, then we will represent them. So, I mean, the head of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Buckley, and I spoke, and first he told me that he had to raise those fees because his budget was in a terrible crisis. And you know, I agree, it is in crisis and we're glad to help, but not at the expense of just sick people having to come up with money that they don't have and therefore have to drop out of the program. But in the same conversation, he also told me that the reason that the fees were hiked, so in hope that not so many people would apply. Now, which is it? Either way, we lose. For you, the taxpayer, my having no marijuana, oh, okay, I decided I would just use my government marijuana, and instead of going to Florida and picking up a 6-month supply, I would try to come back with a full year supply. And so I went in, and I had just come back with a 6-month supply at that time. So I started doubling it up and tripling it up in the hope that I could maintain my glaucoma under control that way. But really, the government sometimes sends decent marijuana, and sometimes it just doesn't work. This time, I had to go all kinds of surgeries this summer that had taken away sight I couldn't afford to lose. I'm getting some of it back, but you, the taxpayers, are getting, I don't know, at least $20,000 worth of bills for 3 surgeries I didn't need, which had me extremely upset. I need more of your patients to contact me. I'm at 916-320-9052. Please contact me if you're in this situation to see if we can lawfully do something about this.
You bet, perfect, Elvy. I appreciate it. And so, if you can imagine, who we have Elvy with a federal medical marijuana patient, and she's having trouble with the Oregon system. Wow. Thank you much, Elvy. We're going to have to wrap it up, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Yes, thank you. Bye. Don't forget to vote.
Welcome to this special segment of Eugene Cannabis TV. You got DanK here, and with our special friend, Joe Canfield. Joe's come across an interesting article in the magazine called Treating Yourself. It's issue number 33. It's called, it's the alternate medicine excuse me, the alternate medical journal. There, I got it out. So the name of the article is Get in the Corner, Dummy, Can of Dunce, written by David B. Allen, MD. And now you want to talk about briefly about the patent, and then tell us about...
Not necessarily about the patent, just about the British Journal of Pharmacology in July of 2010 shows, a study there shows that there's a near 50% reduction in the size of a heart attack, which is called a myocardial infarction, when cannabinol is given during a heart attack. The study shows that this effect is present even if cannabinol is given after the heart attack has started. So it seems that the protective effects of cannabis work in brain strokes and heart attacks. Okay, they do. Suppressing scientific study knowledge is never a good thing. There can be no justification for this. Both sides on the issue should want the truth to come out. It seems, however, people against cannabis don't have a problem with suppression of research. They don't want to know the truth because it goes against their belief system. If you try to educate them, they would deliberately ignore the evidence. Many of them have financial motive not to understand. The suppression of scientific study of cannabis is proof of the ulterior motive of government. What is the ulterior motive? Follow the money. What money is generated by marijuana being illegal? Who profits from over 850,000 people being arrested each year for cannabis crimes? Anyone who profits from keeping medication from reaching sick humans is a criminal. Romans 14:1 states, "Let him that doesn't eat herbs and not judge him that does." You may want to keep this in mind whenever someone questions the legitimacy of a patient using medical cannabis. Would you want others to question your choices of medication? It is past time for the citizens to demand unrestricted, legitimate scientific research on cannabis. Governmental ignorance is not bliss. Can anything based on the ignorance of scientific fact be correct? We can no longer tolerate cannabis dummies. So make sure on November 6th you vote yes on Measure 80. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Joseph. That's well put and well said, and can't say any better than that. It's amazing. Cannabis is an amazing plant.
It really is.
So thank you for...